You walk into your first meeting at a British company, your manager turns to you and says, "That's quite an interesting idea." You smile, you feel great, you think you've just been complimented. But here's the thing, you haven't. In fact, what your manager actually meant was, "I don't like your idea at all." Shocked, you should be. Because in British workplace English, what people say and what people actually mean are often two completely different things. And if you don't understand this invisible layer of communication, you're going to misread your colleagues, misunderstand feedback, and possibly even damage your professional reputation without ever knowing why. Today, we're going to fix that completely. Hey, welcome back to Learn English Lab, your favorite place for advanced English listening practice. I'm so glad you're here, whether you're tuning in on your morning commute, at the gym, or just relaxing with a cup of coffee. Today's episode is a big one, and honestly, it's one I've been wanting to create for a long time. We're diving deep into British workplace English, the professional culture, the meeting language, the office phrases, the unwritten rules, and all the subtle, fascinating things that make working in a British environment so unique. This is an advanced English podcast episode designed for learners at the C1 to C2 level, but honestly, even if you're at a strong B2, you're going to get a tremendous amount of value from this.
It really is. It's like an entirely separate language, isn't it? Just layered perfectly over the English vocabulary you already know.
Yeah, exactly.
So welcome, everyone. I'm honestly just thrilled to be here to unpack this secret code with you.
Well, we're glad to have you because our mission today is simple, but, incredibly powerful. We are tearing down the invisible walls of the British office.
Right.
We're decoding the unwritten rules, those hidden meanings, and the complex social currency that really dictates who succeeds and who struggles in these professional environments.
Yeah, that social currency is everything.
It is, and the goal is for you, the listener, to be able to walk into any British workplace, whether it's like a corporate boardroom in London or just a digital Slack channel with colleagues in Manchester, and, navigate it with total unwavering confidence.
Which is so needed because the frustration for so many international professionals is that they've spent, years mastering English grammar.
Oh, yeah, years.
Building this immense vocabulary, passing advanced proficiency exams. And yet, they sit in a meeting in the UK and feel, well, utterly lost.
Right. And it's not because they don't understand the definitions of the words.
No, not at all. It's because the words aren't doing the job they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like the literal dictionary definition just simply doesn't apply.
It's like the words are wearing disguises.
That's a great way to put it.
And to understand those disguises, I feel like we have to start at the bedrock of the culture.
Right.
What I call the DNA of indirectness.
Yes, the foundation of everything.
Because if you don't understand this core cultural foundation, none of the specific phrases or vocabulary lists we cover later are going to make any sense.
Absolutely. Indirectness really is the beating heart of British workplace culture.
Yeah.
And it's what creates such a jarring experience for almost every non-native speaker.
It really is a shock to the system.
Right. Because in a lot of corporate cultures around the world, especially in places like the US or, Germany or the Netherlands, directness is highly valued.
Oh, completely. It's a professional virtue.
Exactly. If a process is broken, you say it's broken. If an idea is flawed, you just point out the flaw. It's viewed as clean, transparent, and ultimately efficient.
Yeah, I always think of it like an X-ray.
An X-ray.
Yeah, like you see the broken bone, you point right at the fracture, and you set the cast. Let's fix the problem and go home.
Right. Get it done.
But if you bring that exact same energy into a British office, pointing directly at the broken bone is somehow... well, it's considered rude.
Oh, highly rude. In the British professional environment, raw directness just feels abrasive.
Abrasive.
Yeah, it feels confrontational, and sometimes it's perceived as downright aggressive.
Just for stating the problem.
Just for stating it plainly, yes.
Uh-huh.
Instead of prioritizing raw efficiency above all else, the culture places this incredibly high premium on diplomacy, on understatement, on tact.
Yeah.
People will go to extraordinary, sometimes frankly exhausting lengths to soften their language.
Right, to avoid direct confrontation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All to maintain this sacred overarching concept of a pleasant working atmosphere.
Okay, let me push back on that for a second, because I know there's a listener right now thinking, isn't this basically just passive-aggressive behavior?
I hear that all the time.
Right. Like, it sounds like you're setting up an emotional obstacle course for everyone to run through every single day. If you think my idea is bad, just tell me it's bad so I can fix it.
Yeah.
Why play these exhaustive games?
Well, it's totally natural to view it that way if you come from a direct culture.
Sure.
You see it as an unnecessary barrier to getting the job done.
Exactly. Just a waste of time.
But you have to reframe how you look at this. It's not about dishonesty. And it's certainly not meant to be passive-aggressive.
Then what is it?
Think of it as a highly sophisticated system of social shock absorption.
Social shock absorption. I like that.
Right. It's a mutual, unspoken agreement among everyone in the office to protect each other's dignity. The underlying belief is that how you say something matters just as much, if not far more, than what you say.
Okay, so social shock absorption. It's like you're putting a thick velvet cushion over a hammer before you hit a nail.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
You're still driving the nail into the wood, but you're muffling that harsh banging noise.
Exactly. You're still getting the job done, just quietly. Let's look at a concrete contrast to see how this actually works. Take an American manager versus a British manager dealing with the exact same problem.
Okay, let's hear it.
An American manager might review a document and say, "This report has serious problems. Fix sections 3 and 4. Boom. Clear, actionable, nobody is confused.
Right. And in an American context, that manager is being respectful because they're valuing the employee's time. They're getting straight to the point.
Precisely. But the British colleague, delivering the exact same feedback on the exact same flawed report, won't do that.
What do they say?
They'll likely say something like, "I think the report's nearly there. Just a few thoughts on sections 3 and 4. Might be worth having another look."
Oh, wow. I really want to pause and look at that phrasing. The report is nearly there. If I'm an international worker, that sounds like I'm, 95% done? It's practically perfect.
That's the trap.
And might be worth having another look. That sounds like a casual, optional suggestion for a rainy day. Like, if I have time on Friday, maybe I'll glance at it.
But to a British professional, the translation is crystal clear. Nearly there is the velvet cushion you mentioned earlier. It softens the blow to the employee's ego. And might be worth having another look isn't a question at all. It's a direct instruction to completely rewrite those sections.
So the core message is identical to the American manager's message.
Identical. But the delivery is wrapped in heavy layers of diplomacy.
Okay, let's bring this to life with a scenario that probably happens every day. Let's imagine a colleague, James. He just gave a massive hour-long presentation to the department.
Poor James.
Right. He walks over to his coworker, Claire, and asks how it went. James says, "So, how did you think my presentation went?"
And what does Claire say?
Claire replies, "Well, it was certainly very thorough. I think perhaps you could tighten it up a bit next time, just to keep people's attention toward the end. But no, there were some solid points in there."
Right. And then James, trying to clarify because he isn't getting a straight answer, asks,
Right.
"So you thought it was too long?"
Exactly. To which Claire softly laughs, physically steps back a bit, and says, "I think it could benefit from being a touch more concise, that's all."
This is such a classic exchange.
Let's unpack this suitcase of hidden meanings. Claire actually thought the presentation was entirely too long, probably incredibly boring toward the end, and she completely lost interest.
Oh, absolutely she did.
But did she say any of those negative words? No, she used the word thorough.
Right. And in a vacuum, being thorough means being detailed, rigorous, and complete. It's a highly positive trait.
Normally.
But in this specific British context, calling a presentation certainly very thorough is a coded, polite way of saying, "You gave us far too much information, you lacked focus, and you overwhelmed everyone in the room."
Ouch. And then she suggests he tighten it up a bit. This is such a fascinating physical metaphor to me.
How so?
Well, when you tighten a screw, you're just turning it a tiny fraction of a millimeter, right? It implies the structure is already great, just slightly loose.
That's the illusion, yeah.
But what she actually means is cut this presentation down significantly, gut half the slides.
Spot on. Notice how she prefers mechanical metaphors like tighten it up over emotional or judgmental words like boring or exhausting.
Oh, that's clever. It keeps the criticism objective.
Exactly. And when James finally calls it out and asks directly, "So you thought it was too long?" Claire's reaction is very telling. She actually laughs softly.
Why the laugh?
That laugh is a nervous reaction to James's bluntness. He broke the polite code by being direct, so she immediately retreats back into the safety of the code and says, I think it could benefit from being a touch more concise.
A touch, meaning a tiny microscopic amount.
When she actually means noticeably and dramatically shorter.
Wow. This is the DNA of indirectness in action. Once you start recognizing these patterns, words like thorough, phrases like tighten up or a touch, you stop taking the literal dictionary definition.
Right. You start hearing the intended cultural definition. It completely changes how you experience a day at the office.
It must.
And this foundational understanding explains why the most dangerous place for an international worker isn't the water cooler, it's the meeting room.
Oh man, the meeting room minefield.
It's a minefield.
Because if indirectness is the foundation, the British meeting is the grand stage where this elaborate play is performed. I think for a lot of international professionals, sitting in a British meeting feels like a surreal experience.
What do you mean?
Well, everyone is being incredibly pleasant, everyone is nodding, smiling, taking notes, and then the meeting ends and you realize you have absolutely no idea what was actually decided.
Or who is doing what?
Yes. Or if your idea was even approved or rejected.
It's an incredibly common phenomenon. It's a minefield because the phrases used sound so positive or completely neutral to an outsider. But to a local, they are flashing red sirens.
Okay, let's decode some of these dangerous phrases. These are the ones that can really damage your standing if you take them literally. Let's start with a classic.
Oh, I know which one you're going to say.
With respect?
Yes.
Yeah.
With respect. Or it's even more dangerous, elevated cousin, with the greatest respect.
That sounds so nice, though. If you translate this literally, you might think the person is expressing deep admiration for you or validating your expertise.
In reality, when a British person starts a sentence with respect, they are about to disagree with you completely, and often quite strongly. It's the verbal equivalent of drawing a sword.
Wow. It's a warning bell.
Yeah.
Imagine an international employee proposing a brand new software tool to the senior leadership team.
Okay, setting the scene.
You lay out the cost savings, the efficiency. You feel great. And the senior manager leans forward and says, with respect, I don't think we have the capacity for a system migration this quarter.
Yeah, that manager isn't honoring your idea. They are swiftly executing it. It's dead.
Okay, here's another one that I find absolutely fascinating because it sounds like such high praise. That's a brave idea.
Oh, dear.
Right? If someone calls my idea brave, I feel like a visionary. I feel like an innovator taking a bold, necessary risk.
And that's exactly the trap. In British workplace English, calling an idea brave is absolutely not a compliment.
Not at all.
No. It means the idea is highly risky, borders on foolish, and the speaker is entirely convinced it will fail catastrophically.
Goodness.
They're essentially saying, you are walking blindly toward a cliff, and I am formally stepping back so I don't go down with you when you fall.
That is so critical to know. Imagine pursuing a massive project because you thought your boss called it brave and was supporting your visionary leadership, only to realize months later they were actually calling you reckless.
Exactly. It's a career killer if you misunderstand it.
How about the phrase, I hear what you're saying?
This one is particularly tricky because it sounds like active listening, which, is taught in every corporate management course globally.
Yeah, I hear you. I validate you.
But in the UK, I hear what you're saying doesn't mean I agree with you, and it barely even means I validate your perspective.
Then what does it mean?
It simply means the sound waves of your voice have reached my ears, I comprehend your position, and I'm now going to pivot immediately to explain precisely why you are wrong.
That is hilarious. It's just a structural hinge in the conversation.
Exactly. It's a polite transition away from your bad idea to their better idea.
What about when someone softens their disagreement and says, I'm not entirely convinced?
No, not entirely convinced translates directly to, I strongly disagree.
Just flat out no.
Yes. The addition of the word entirely is the softener. It implies they are partially convinced, leaving the door open just a crack to save face. But the reality is the door is firmly shut and locked.
And what if they want to just kill an idea without debating it at all? We see phrases like, let's park that for now. Or could we perhaps revisit this?
Let's park that is a great idiom.
Yeah.
You're taking the car off the main road, pulling into a lot, and turning off the engine.
So it's stopped.
Dead stop. It means let's stop talking about this immediately because it's irrelevant, distracting, or we're going in useless circles.
And could we perhaps revisit this?
That usually means this current approach is completely failing and we need to tear it down and change it completely at a later date. It rarely means you'll actually just look at the exact same idea again.
Okay, let's see this dynamic in action, because seeing it in a conversation really makes it click.
Let's do it.
Imagine a scenario where a project manager, David, wants to launch a big marketing campaign next Monday. He thinks they're good to go.
Okay, David is ready.
He sits in the meeting and says, I think we should launch the campaign next Monday. Everything's ready to go. His colleague, Sarah, who thinks this is a terrible idea, replies, that's a brave timeline, David. I wonder if we might want to give ourselves a little more breathing room.
Ouch. David senses some hesitation, but he doesn't quite grasp the severity. He asks, you think we're not ready?
Right.
And Sarah, deeply ingrained in the culture, backpedals from giving a direct no. She says, no, I'm sure we're nearly there. I just think it might be worth doing a final review, just to dot the I's and cross the T's.
So David tries to pin down the logistics. He asks, so push it back a week.
Which is too direct.
Yeah. And Sarah delivers the final masterstroke. She says, I wouldn't say push it back exactly. Maybe just give it a bit more space. Shall we say the following Monday? That way everyone's comfortable. And David just nods and agrees.
It's a phenomenal negotiation by Sarah. And we really need to look at the psychology of her language here.
Because she completely derails David's plan.
Completely. She stops a launch dead in its tracks without ever once using the word no, delay, stop, or not ready.
It's like magic. She starts with our red flag phrase, a brave timeline.
Right, so she's telling him he's being reckless.
Then she introduces breathing room. I love this. She doesn't say we need more time because we are behind schedule and the assets aren't done.
No, that would be pointing at the broken bone.
Right. Breathing room sounds luxurious, healthy, almost like a wellness retreat for the project team. Who could argue against breathing room?
Exactly. And when David tries to use direct mechanical language, asking if they should push it back, Sarah completely rejects that framing.
Because pushback sounds like a failure.
Right. It sounds like a delay. It sounds negative. So she reframes the delay as giving the project a bit more space. Space implies growth, freedom, and care.
For everyone listening right now, just imagine how easy it would be to agree with Sarah, thinking she was being incredibly supportive of your vision and your team's mental health.
When in
reality, you've just completely surrendered your project timeline to her. She took the steering wheel right out of David's hands, parked the car, and he practically thanked her for doing it.
That's the power of the language. It's incredible. Yeah. But we also have to talk about the physical space between the words in these meetings.
The space between the words. You mean the silence.
The silence, the pauses. In many cultures, a pause is just an empty space waiting to be filled by the next speaker.
Right, like passing the mic.
But in a British meeting, silence is an incredibly active, heavy signal.
Oh, yeah. A pause after someone makes a suggestion can be deafening. It's a physical sensation in the room.
You feel it.
You pitch an idea, and nobody says anything for 3 long seconds. You might think they're just pondering its brilliance.
But what does it usually mean?
It usually means they disagree and absolutely do not want to be the first person to say it out loud. Or they're waiting for the hierarchy to step in and handle the awkwardness.
Yes, the hierarchy, which is arguably the biggest trap for international workers.
The illusion of a flat hierarchy.
Exactly. British meetings can feel incredibly polite, collaborative, and almost entirely egalitarian. Everyone is using first names. The interns are speaking up. It creates a very deceptive environment.
The illusion of flatness. I think this is where so many talented, ambitious people trip up and damage their reputations without ever realizing what they did wrong.
It happens all the time.
Because visually, the modern British office looks casual. You walk in, the CEO is wearing jeans, sitting at an open plan desk right next to the marketing coordinator.
Yeah, managers insist you call them by their first name.
Right. People are joking across different levels of seniority by the coffee machine. It looks so modern and flat.
It looks flat. It feels flat. But the hierarchy is absolutely still there. It's just been made invisible. And an invisible barrier is significantly harder to navigate than a visible one.
Because you don't know when you've hit it until you crash into it.
Precisely. In a traditional hierarchical culture, you know exactly who the boss is. They sit in a corner office with a closed door, and you don't speak to them unless spoken to. The rules are clear.
But in the UK...
In the UK, the rules are hidden.
I always compare this to the velvet rope at an exclusive VIP club.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. The rope itself is soft. It's just a plush piece of velvet hanging waist high. It looks like you could easily just step right over it without any effort.
But you shouldn't.
No. Because the reality is there's an invisible bouncer standing right there, and if you step over that rope without the right permission, you're going to get thrown out of the club.
That velvet rope is exactly what phrases like, "my door is always open," represent.
Oh, that's a classic one.
A senior director might stand up at a company offsite and say, "My door is always open. I want to hear everyone's ideas." But the unwritten, ironclad rule is that you should absolutely not walk through that door without going through the proper channels first.
It's a statement of philosophical management style, not an invitation for literal foot traffic.
Exactly.
Wait, let me stop you there. If the CEO literally says, email me directly, and I don't, doesn't that make me look unresponsive or timid? Why even make the statement if they're just going to penalize you for taking them up on it?
It's a great question, and it's so confusing. The CEO makes the statement because they want to project modern, accessible leadership. They genuinely want to be seen as approachable.
Okay, so it's PR.
Partly. And they do want the information from the ground floor, but, and this is the crucial part, they want that information to flow upward through the established management structure.
So they want you to tell your manager.
Who tells their director? Who tells the CEO?
Let's look at how this plays out in real life with another scenario. Imagine two colleagues, Aisha and Ben. They've just come out of a massive company-wide town hall meeting.
Okay.
Aisha says, "Did you notice how the CEO said he wants more open communication?" And Ben, who knows the culture, just smiles and says, "Yeah, he says that every quarter."
Ben knows the score.
Right. But Aisha takes the CEO completely at face value. She says, "So, should I email him about the supply chain issue we've been having?"
Oh, no.
And Ben immediately warns her. He says, "I'd probably go through your line manager first. Maybe have a chat with Simon, and then if Simon thinks it's worth escalating, he can raise it."
Good advice from Ben, but Aisha's probably confused.
She's completely confused. She says, "But the CEO literally just said he wants to hear directly from the teams." And Ben explains the velvet rope. He says, he did, and he meant it. But he also meant through the right channels. If you email him directly, it might come across as going over Simon's head, and Simon won't love that.
Going over someone's head. That is the cardinal sin in an invisible hierarchy.
The cardinal sin.
If Aisha emails the CEO directly, the CEO might actually respond politely. He might even thank her. But Aisha's direct manager, Simon, is going to feel deeply undermined, disrespected, and bypassed.
Just from one email.
Just from one email. Because in a polite culture, bypassing someone suggests they were a failure, that they couldn't handle the issue themselves.
And here's the real tragedy of it. Simon will likely never say to Aisha, "I am angry that you bypassed me."
Oh, never. That would be too direct.
Right. He will just become slightly colder. He'll be less supportive of her projects. He might leave her off a key email chain. Aisha will have severely damaged a crucial relationship without ever knowing the exact moment it happened.
She stepped over the velvet rope, and the invisible bouncer took her name off the VIP list.
Exactly.
This is why understanding the concept of escalation is vital. You must treat the hierarchy with the exact same respect you would in a very traditional vertical corporate culture.
Even when the environment is dressed up in casual clothes and first names.
Even then.
So if the hierarchy is strict but invisible and communication is highly indirect, this creates a massive challenge for everyday work.
It certainly does.
Because since I can't bypass my boss, how on earth do I handle feedback from them? Or even harder, how do I tell my boss they're wrong? This takes us to the intricate art of disagreement and feedback.
Yes. This is where we encounter the famous feedback sandwich.
The sandwich.
Which is a global concept, but the British have evolved it into an absolute art form.
Just to review, the feedback sandwich is a piece of positive feedback, followed by the negative criticism in the middle, followed by another piece of positive feedback to close it out. Right. The bread, the meat, the bread.
That's the one. The intention is that the positive comments make the critical meat easier to swallow.
Makes sense.
However, in the British professional environment, seasoned professionals know the sandwich is coming the second they hear the first compliment.
I can smell the bread.
Exactly. When a manager starts a meeting with unprompted praise, the British employee immediately braces for impact, waiting for the inevitable word but.
The word but is like a giant neon sign pointing to the criticism. Your presentation was great, B-U-T. It completely erases the compliment that came before it. It makes the bread taste stale.
Which is why advanced British professionals often eradicate the word but entirely from their feedback vocabulary.
Really? They don't use it at all?
They try not to. They use far more sophisticated transitional phrases to slip the criticism in without triggering that defensive reaction. They'll use words like however, or phrases like, that said, I just wonder if, or the incredibly potent, my only slight concern would be.
Oh, that's smooth. Let's see how a masterful manager executes this. Imagine a manager, Karen, having a quarterly review with her employee, Marco.
Okay, a review setting, high stakes.
Karen says, so overall, I think you've settled in really well. The team seems to really like working with you, and your technical skills are clearly very strong.
The top layer of bread. Marco probably thinks the review is going phenomenally well.
He does. He says, oh, great, thanks, that's good to hear. But here comes Karen with the subtle shift.
What does she say?
She says, yeah, absolutely. I suppose my only thought, and it's really just a minor thing, is that sometimes in meetings it might come across as though you're perhaps a little too direct. And I know that's just your style, and honestly, there's a lot to be said for being straightforward, but I think some people might occasionally find it a bit much.
Wow. Okay, so Marco asks for an example, I assume.
Yeah, and Karen explains that when Marco told a colleague their proposal wouldn't work last week, the core message was completely right, but the delivery could have been a touch softer.
And then Marco has this brilliant realization. He says, I see. So it's not what I said, but how I said it.
Yes, and Karen validates him and finishes the sandwich. Exactly, nothing to worry about at all. You're doing brilliantly.
This dialogue is an absolute masterclass.
Let's look at what actually happened here. Karen's real message is, Marco, your bluntness in meetings is upsetting the team, creating friction, and you need to stop it immediately.
That's the bomb she's dropping.
But look at the incredible amount of wrapping paper she puts around that bomb before handing it to him.
It's heavily padded. She calls it really just a minor thing. But let's be real. If a manager is bringing it up in a formal, documented one-to-one review, it is undeniably not a minor thing.
Definitely not. It's a serious behavioral issue.
She also uses amazing distancing language. It might come across as though you're perhaps a little too direct. She doesn't say you are too direct. She says the perception might be that way.
This removes the personal attack entirely, doesn't it?
Completely. It separates Marco's identity from his behavior. It allows Marco to save face, look at the behavior objectively, and adjust it without feeling insulted. Marco's realization, it's not what I said, but how I said it, is basically the golden rule for surviving in this culture.
That's such a great takeaway. Okay, so that's receiving feedback downwards. What about disagreeing laterally with a colleague or upwards with a boss? How do we say no without saying no?
You rely heavily on hedging. You use phrases that introduce a shadow of doubt without initiating a direct confrontation.
Give us an example.
Well, for example, instead of saying, I disagree, you say, I take your point, but. This validates their intellectual contribution before systematically dismantling it.
I take your point, but that's good.
Or you might say, that's one way of looking at it, which is a phenomenally polite way of saying that is the absolute wrong way of looking at it.
My personal favorite is, correct me if I'm wrong, but, which, let's be honest, really means I am absolutely right, you are factually wrong, and I'm about to lay out the evidence, but I'll pretend I'm open to correction.
Spot on. Let's look at another scenario to see lateral disagreement. Let's say Liam and Sophie are colleagues deciding on a marketing budget.
Okay, lateral peers.
Sophie wants to dump all the money into a single social media channel. Liam thinks that's a terrible, highly risky idea that could tank their quarter.
But he doesn't say that.
Of course not. He says, that's certainly one approach. I suppose my slight worry is that we might be putting all our eggs in one basket.
Slight worry, and putting all our eggs in one basket, which is a great common idiom for taking a massive, unhedged risk.
Exactly. And when Sophie challenges him and asks directly, so you're saying you disagree with the strategy, Liam literally laughs and deflects. He says, no, I'm just playing devil's advocate, really. But yeah, I think there's a conversation to be had about diversification.
Playing devil's advocate is a brilliant deflector shield.
It's the best.
Yeah.
By claiming the role of the devil's advocate, Liam creates a hypothetical sandbox. It allows him to argue passionately against Sophie's idea while pretending he's just doing it as an intellectual exercise to help the team pressure test the concept.
Rather than admitting he fundamentally hates her idea.
Exactly. He softens his push for a different strategy by calling it a blended approach and saying there's a conversation to be had.
For everyone listening, I want you to actively practice this. Next time you're in a meeting and your instinct is to say, that's wrong, stop yourself, bite your tongue, take a breath, and try saying, "That's an interesting perspective. I wonder if we might also consider," and just watch how the physical temperature in the room changes.
It's amazing. Watch how much more receptive your colleagues are to your ideas when you wrap them in this language.
It's a highly practical adjustment that yields immediate results. Now, we've conquered spoken disagreement in the meeting room. But what happens when you have to document these delicate interactions?
Oh, boy.
What happens when you move from the physical meeting room to the digital inbox?
Welcome to the Written Code, Mastering Email Language. If you think spoken British English is nuanced and tricky, the written form is practically Victorian in its strict, unyielding codes of conduct.
Victorian. That's a strong word.
It's true. Emails are where careers are quietly nurtured or slowly, digitally sabotaged.
It truly is an art form. You don't just send information, you orchestrate a social interaction. And it begins before you even state the purpose of your email, right?
Always. In a British professional email, you simply must start with a pleasantry. There are no exceptions unless you are in a continuous, rapid-fire back-and-forth thread.
Like, hope you're well. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope you're keeping well.
Precisely. Now, to a highly efficient, data-driven outsider, this looks like wasted space. It's filler. It's not meaningful data that moves the project forward.
But if you skip it...
Skipping it and jumping straight into your request is considered abrupt, cold, and offensively transactional.
I always compare this to warming up before a heavy workout at the gym. You don't just walk into the gym, load up the squat rack with maximum weight, and start sprinting.
Right, you'll get hurt.
Exactly. You'll pull a muscle or snap a tendon. In the UK, skipping the "hope you had a good weekend" and just typing "send me the Q3 report" is like sprinting without stretching. You are going to severely injure the professional relationship.
That's a perfect way to look at it. The pleasantry is the social stretch. It acknowledges the humanity of the person on the other end of the screen.
And then when you finally get to the actual request, it must be heavily softened. Direct commands are entirely unacceptable.
Right. You don't say, "send me the data by 5 p.m." You say, "Could you possibly send me the data?" Or, better yet, "I was wondering if you might be able to send the data over when you have a moment."
I don't suppose you could send the data across. It's wild. It sounds like you're asking for a massive, unreasonable personal favor, even if sending that specific data is literally the only thing in their job description.
And here is perhaps the most fascinating contradiction in British email culture. Sometimes the most heavily softened, excessively polite requests are actually the ones sent in the most furious, urgent state.
Really? The angrier they are, the politer they get.
Yes. If a British colleague is absolutely livid that you haven't sent a critical report, they won't write an angry, all-caps email. They'll write the most painfully polite, passive email possible. I was just wondering if you might have had a chance to cast an eye over that report we discussed last week.
It's weaponized politeness. It's polite on the surface, but underneath it's screaming.
Exactly. And delivering bad news in an email follows the exact same rule as the feedback sandwich. You never, ever make the bad news the first sentence.
Let's analyze an email scenario. Rachel is reviewing her colleague Mark's financial projections for the upcoming quarter. She opens the spreadsheet, and they are completely wrong.
It's just a disaster.
The math is off, the assumptions are bad, and she needs him to redo the entire thing before the board meeting. If she's direct, she'd write, "Mark, the math is wrong. Redo this."
But instead, what does she write?
She starts with, "Hi, Mark. Hope you're keeping well. Thanks so much for sending the draft across. I've had a chance to look through it, and there's some really good work in there. I particularly like the section on market analysis."
There's the warm-up, and there's the top layer of the sandwich. She's established goodwill.
Right. Now she transitions to the massive problem. I did have a few thoughts on some of the other sections, though. I wonder if it might be worth revisiting the financial projections. I think some of the figures might need a second look just to make sure we're presenting the strongest case to the board.
Brilliant. Let's translate this corporate poetry. I wonder if it might be worth revisiting. Means these are completely wrong and you need to rewrite them from scratch immediately.
And might need a second look.
That means there are glaring, embarrassing mathematical errors. And presenting the strongest case is her very polite way of saying, what you have currently written is incredibly weak and will make us all look foolish.
But she doesn't abandon him there. She offers support to soften the critique. Happy to jump on a quick call to chat it through if that's easier.
Yes, which removes the sting of the massive correction by offering a collaborative solution. It says, we're in this together, even though it's entirely Mark's mistake.
And finally, the sign-off. This is a complete minefield on its own. Rachel signs off with, Kind regards?
Kind regards is the gold standard of British email sign-offs. It's perfectly balanced, it's professional, polite, but not overly familiar. Best wishes is a lovely, warmer alternative if you actually know the person well and have a good rapport.
But what if someone just writes regards? Just that one word?
Oh. If someone who normally writes kind regards or best wishes suddenly signs off an email to you with just regards on its own, you need to pay very close attention.
Why? What does it mean?
In the context of British email subtleties, dropping the kind is practically a declaration of war. It signals deep annoyance, frustration, and a sudden, freezing chilling of the professional relationship.
It's the digital equivalent of slamming a door in someone's face. Wow, that's cold. Which actually transitions us beautifully from the digital world back to the physical office and into the realm of our next crucial topic, the social currency.
Ah, yes.
Specifically, small talk and the incredible power of the word sorry.
We have to realize that those email pleasantries are really just a digital reflection of office small talk. And we must emphasize this point clearly.
Yeah.
Small talk is not a distraction from the work.
It's not.
In a British office, small talk is the work. It's the foundation upon which all actual work gets done.
I see so many driven, hyper-ambitious professionals come in and view small talk as an annoying delay. They think, why are we talking about the rain for 5 minutes? Let's just review the spreadsheet. Time is money.
And that's a huge mistake.
But if you skip the small talk, you're starving yourself of the social currency you desperately need to buy cooperation later on when things get stressful.
Without a doubt. Small talk is the social glue that holds these professional alliances together. It's how baseline trust is built. If a British colleague feels they can comfortably chat with you about mundane, low-stakes things for 3 minutes, their subconscious tells them they can trust you when it comes to high-stakes professional decisions.
But like everything we've discussed, there are strict rules to the small talk game. Rule number 1, keep it safe.
Extremely safe. The approved topics are the weather, the nightmare of the morning commute, weekend plans, upcoming holidays, food, and of course tea.
What about the banned topics?
You must absolutely avoid politics, religion, salary discussions, or overly personal questions about family trauma or deep relationship issues.
Rule number 2, keep it light. It's social lubrication. It's supposed to be breezy and easy to navigate. And rule number 3, which might be my absolute favorite aspect of British culture, self-deprecation is the ultimate charm.
Modesty and humor are incredibly attractive traits in the UK. If someone asks about your weekend, and you say, I had a spectacular weekend, I closed a massive real estate deal, bought a sports car, and ran a marathon, people will quietly recoil.
Right, nobody wants to hear that.
It's seen as boasting, which is highly distasteful. But if you say, I tried to fix a simple shelf in my kitchen, managed to put a massive hole in the wall, and spent Sunday profusely apologizing to my wife, you'll instantly win them over. They love when you make fun of your own incompetence.
And rule number 4, how are you is not a medical inquiry, it's just a greeting.
Yes. When someone passes you in the hall and says, how are you? Or you all right? They're simply saying hello. The expected response is, yeah, good, thanks, you, or not bad, you.
This is a huge trap for newcomers. I always warn people, if a British colleague says, all right, and you stop walking and overanswer with your actual problems, actually, I'm terrible, my back is hurting, my cat is sick, and I'm stressed about my mortgage rate, you can practically see the British person's soul leave their body in sheer panic.
They do not want that emotional information. They aren't equipped for it in the hallway.
Let's look at a perfect example of this delicate conversational dance. Imagine Tom and Priya bumping into each other in the office kitchen on a rainy Monday morning.
Okay, the classic kitchen scene.
Tom says, morning, good weekend. And Priya replies, yeah, not bad, actually. Tried to go for a bike ride on Saturday, but got absolutely soaked about 10 minutes in. Typical.
Got absolutely soaked.
Oh.
Vivid language, but complaining mildly about the tragic weather is the safest, most universally uniting topic in the UK.
Tom replies, classic British summer that. I didn't do much, just pottered about the house, did a bit of gardening, very exciting stuff.
Pottered about is a great phrase. It means doing small, meaningless, unstressful tasks. And notice Tom's dry humor at the end. Very exciting stuff.
Because it wasn't.
Exactly, he's being completely sarcastic. He knows gardening isn't thrilling, and that's the joke. It's pure self-deprecation to show he isn't self-important.
And Priya responds with the ultimate ironic phrase, living the dream, Tom. Which basically means life is incredibly mundane, the weather is awful, but we're surviving and finding the humor in it.
And then comes the most important offer in British corporate life. Tom says, right, fancy a cuppa. And Priya says, go on then, milk, no sugar.
Fancy a cuppa. Offering someone a cup of tea is a high-value transaction of social currency.
Huge. It shows you're part of the team, you're considerate, and you understand the daily ritual. Never underestimate the power of making the tea. If you never offer to make a round of tea, people will notice and they will silently judge you for being entirely self-serving.
And while we're discussing specific words that carry social weight, we have to decode the British use of the word sorry, because you will hear it constantly, dozens of times a day, but it's rarely used as an actual apology for a mistake.
Like, sorry, could I just squeeze past you? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Sorry, but I think we need to revisit this budget. In almost all of these cases, sorry is functioning as a social buffer. It's a tool used to interrupt politely, to disagree without sounding aggressive, or to make a request seem less demanding. It's a linguistic lubricant that prevents friction between two people.
Okay, we've covered the cultural foundation, the indirectness, the meeting room minefields, the invisible hierarchy, the unwritten rules of emails, and the intricacies of small talk. Now it's time to arm our listeners with the exact C1 and C2 power vocabulary they need to execute this flawlessly.
This is the toolkit. These are the specific words and corporate phrases that, if used correctly, will instantly signal to your British colleagues that you aren't just competent in English, but you're a highly proficient, culturally aware professional. Let's run through them.
Let's start with a big one that gets used constantly. To flag something.
To flag something means to bring it to someone's attention, usually highlighting a potential issue before it becomes a full-blown crisis.
Like raising a literal flag.
Exactly. Imagine you notice a billing error on a client account. Instead of running into your boss's office and saying, we have a massive problem, the client is going to be furious, you say, I just wanted to flag a potential issue with the client contract. Flagging sounds incredibly proactive, professional, and calm. It lowers the temperature of the panic.
Next up, to loop someone in.
This means to include someone in a communication chain or a project. Instead of saying, send this to the director now, you say, can we make sure to loop the director in on this email thread? It ensures visibility for senior staff without sounding like you're demanding immediate action from them. It's inclusive rather than demanding.
Here's a concept we discussed earlier in terms of disagreement, but let's give it the official vocabulary term, pushback.
To push back is the professional, diplomatic way of describing resistance or disagreement. Let's say a client rejects your proposal. Instead of saying, the client hated our idea and rejected it, which sounds like a personal failure, you say, the client pushed back on our pricing structure.
Oh, that sounds much better.
It softens the conflict. It makes it sound like a physical force of negotiation rather than a harsh rejection.
What about when you're in a confusing meeting and you want to make sure everyone actually agrees before moving forward? You say you want to be on the same page.
Let's just take a beat and make sure we're all on the same page. It means ensuring everyone shares the same understanding and expectations. It's a fantastic way to politely pause a chaotic or confusing meeting and force clarity without accusing anyone of being confusing or disorganized. You're taking the burden of the confusion onto the group as a whole.
No, a very modern corporate term that has taken over. Bandwidth.
Originally a telecommunications and tech term, bandwidth now refers to a person's capacity, time, and mental energy to take on new work. Imagine your manager asks you to take on a massive new project, but you're already working 50 hours a week.
I just say I'm too busy.
But if you say, I'm too busy, I can't do it, it sounds like a personal refusal. But if you say, I'd love to help, but I just don't have the bandwidth for another project right now, it depersonalizes the rejection. It blames your capacity like a server at maximum load rather than your willingness to work.
Let's delay a conversation politely. Circle back.
I think we're getting stuck in the weeds here. Let's circle back on this after the quarterly review. It means to return to a topic later. It's a very smooth, professional way to park a difficult or circular discussion that's wasting time without insulting the people who are arguing.
This next one is highly advanced, real C2 level corporate speak. Optics.
Optics refers to how an action or decision is perceived by others, usually the public, the board, or the rest of the company, regardless of its actual factual merit. For example, the optics of laying off staff right after announcing record executive bonuses are terrible. It's not about whether the layoffs are financially necessary. It's entirely about impression management.
A classic, inescapable corporate buzzword. Stakeholder.
The stakeholder is anyone with an interest or investment in a project's success or failure. We need to get buy-in from all key stakeholders before we launch. It sounds much more professional and elevated than saying, we need to talk to the people who care about this. It gives everyone involved a sense of importance.
Identifying issues, pain point.
A pain point is a specific recurring frustration for a customer or a team. The clunky software is a real pain point for our customer service reps. It turns an emotional complaint into a sterile analytical business term that can be solved with a strategy.
And finally, making things better, usually by cutting things out. Streamline.
To streamline means to make a process more efficient, almost always by cutting unnecessary steps or laying off redundant staff. We need to streamline the approval process to save time. It's a highly positive aerodynamic spin on what is essentially reducing, cutting down, or stripping away a process.
All right, to really lock this in, let's put you, the listener, in the hot seat. We're going to run through some rapid-fire practice scenarios based on the fatal errors we've discussed today. I'll give you a situation, and I want you to mentally guess the answer before we reveal the hidden meaning. Ready?
Let's do it. Let's see how well they've absorbed the code.
Scenario 1. You're presenting your new slide deck to the department. A senior colleague smiles, points at the screen, and says, "That is a very brave choice of color for the presentation slides." What do they actually mean? Is it a compliment on your bold design skills? Think about it for a second.
It's absolutely not a compliment. Remember, brave is our coded word for questionable, highly risky, or foolish. They think the colors are garish, inappropriate, and deeply unprofessional. Your action item here is to change those slide colors immediately before the client sees them.
Scenario 2. You're having a heated, passionate debate in a meeting about a software feature, and the project manager cuts in and says, "Let's discuss this offline." What does that mean? Should you stop talking now and just email them your thoughts later?
No, offline does not refer to the internet or email in this context. It means not in front of this specific group of people. The project manager is signaling that your conversation has become inappropriate for the current setting. Either it's wasting the broader team's time, or it's becoming too heated. You need to stop talking about it immediately, drop the subject, and follow up privately with that person later.
Scenario 3. You need to send a quick meeting update to your internal team, so you draft an email that says, "Dear esteemed colleagues, I wish to hereby inform you that the meeting shall be rescheduled." How will this be received by a British team?
It's going to be received with raised eyebrows and maybe some quiet laughter. It's far too stiff, excessively formal, and archaic. Modern British professional English is intensely polite, but it's also relatively relaxed in its vocabulary among internal teams. Should be something much closer to, "Hi everyone, just a quick heads up, we're moving Thursday's meeting to Friday. Cheers." Being overly formal actually creates an uncomfortable, weird distance between you and your colleagues.
Final scenario. The team lead looks at the clock during a brainstorming session and says, "Right, I think we've probably covered enough ground on this for today. Shall we circle back next week?" What should you do? Should you quickly pitch your one last brilliant idea?
Absolutely not. You should close your notebook and stop pitching immediately. The phrase, "covered enough ground," combined with "circle back," means the discussion is definitively, non-negotiably over. Do not try to keep the topic alive. Agree, note your action items, and let everyone leave the room.
These scenarios are so eye-opening. It really brings home the fact that you aren't just learning vocabulary from a textbook, you're learning how to read the psychological temperature of the room. As we start to wrap this up, how would you synthesize the core lessons we've unpacked today? If a listener remembers nothing else, what should they take away?
If we pull all these threads together, the central truth is this. In a British workplace, the delivery matters just as much as the message. Indirectness is the master key that unlocks the entire culture. You have to actively listen beneath the surface to decode meeting jargon like brave and with respect.
Right.
You must understand the mechanics of the heavily padded feedback sandwich so you don't miss crucial criticisms of your work. You have to respect that the hierarchy is incredibly strict, even when it looks invisible, flat, and casual. Use small talk and self-deprecation as the social glue it's meant to be, and never, ever forget to soften your emails with pleasantries. Master these elements, and you won't just survive in a British office, you'll truly thrive and build incredible relationships.
It's like learning the choreography to a complex dance everyone else has been doing since childhood. Once you finally know the steps, you stop stepping on people's toes. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. We spent this entire deep dive analyzing this incredibly delicate, highly nuanced, deeply localized British communication style.
We have.
But look at the world right now. We're seeing a massive rise in globalized remote teams. We're communicating across borders constantly on Zoom and Slack. And perhaps most significantly, we're increasingly using AI-driven communication tools like auto-drafting emails, predictive text, or AI meeting summaries.
Oh, that's true.
And those tools naturally strip out human nuance and tend to flatten language into a highly direct, globally neutral, robotic tone. So the question I want you to mull over is this. Will this beautiful, complex British style of indirect communication survive the next decade? Or will the immense pressure of global AI-mediated business force it to adapt to a much more direct, standardized global format? It's something to watch very closely as you navigate your own career in the coming years.
That's a fascinating tension. The collision of a localized high-context culture with a globalized low-context technology is definitely something that will shape the future of professional communication.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our journey today. Here is your homework. I want you to pick 5 of the phrases or vocabulary words we discussed today. Maybe try using flag, loop in, or just consciously try using however instead of but when giving feedback. And put them into practice this week. Just test them out in the wild and see how it changes your interactions. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you never miss a new one. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep pushing yourself, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.